On tonight's program, we're short of Hippiejohn, but that's okay because there's a Castmodean in the house.
I just like building things and seeing what I can.
We discuss mission titles.
So I knew from early on that the title was going to involve something mighty.
And fleet marks. What do we think of the changes?
If I were an elitist, I would say you're welcome.
Well, yeah, because, we got credit for the other change. I think we ought to get credit for this change, too. Join us for the Foundry Roundtable. Hello and welcome to Episode 3 of the Foundry Roundtable, the podcast exclusively covering the Foundry for Star Trek Online. I'm your tame Foundry author, Drogan1701. With me is the only man who looks good in a tricorn hat, Greendragoon.
Peace and long life.
And look what the Tholian dragged in, Markhawkman.
Hey.
And we have a guest with us tonight, who actually happens to be the very first Foundry author I ever spoke to, the first time I logged into the Starbase UGC chat room 3 years ago, Castmodean.
Good Lord, has it been that long?
It has been that long.
Yeah.
So I went back and looked up one of the articles I wrote for Starbase UGC way back when the Foundry was on Tribble, and it was from 2010.
Oh God, I'm an old hat.
Yes.
Isn't
Like
the
a tricorner
game only
hat.
3 years old?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It was.
It was
roughly
nearing its first
October.
anniversary when the Foundry first got started on Tribble.
Yeah, it was roughly October of 2010 when it went on to Redshirt, and then November when it went on to Tribble, and
So,
then
yeah,
about
a long time.
February.
It was February, I believe. Yeah. When
when it went live and broke.
Well, it breaks every major update. That's just how it goes.
Well, there's a difference between it breaking and then it breaking. I remember the Season 4 outage. That was insane.
The
Yeah.
first rule of Season 4, don't talk about Season 4.
Well, we start tonight by, I kind of would like to acknowledge the new slew of fleet marks that have been added. Obviously, that patch is on Tribble as we're recording this Wednesday night. Knowing Cryptic, it will probably be on holodeck by the time anybody is listening to this on Thursday. So, I don't know. The changes look good to me, but I don't really care that much about fleet marks. So, I don't know. What do you guys think?
My primary source of fleet marks is DOF assignments, so it doesn't have much an effect on me.
If I were an elitist, I would say you're welcome.
Well, yeah, because, we got credit for the other change. I think we ought to get credit for this change, too. So, yeah, you're welcome. All right. So, we go into our first segment, which is, what are you working on? I think we'll start with our guest. Cast, what have you been working on?
Well, so far I've spent most of my time lately revising old missions and constantly trying to improve them. I've got 2 missions published right now. One that's obviously gotten spotlighted, which I can't touch. The other one that I have that's published, I've been constantly going back and trying to recreate interiors because I'm never happy with what's there. And I've spent a lot of time working on a Starbase interior that's driving me nuts.
What about
plus-
driving you nuts?
Just that I probably made it too big.
I know the feeling.
A little too ambitious.
Probably. It didn't look as big when you start on one quadrant at a time, but when you look at it all together, you realize just how big it is and how I'm now going to have to find some way to populate it with things to do. And, yeah.
That's the tough part.
It's kind of like the ship from Spaceballs, where they said that if they were to walk from the hangar bay to the bridge, the movie would be over before they get there.
Yeah, pretty much. I have built a one-ring circus area. There is a mall. No petting zoo, though. I leave Commodore Bob to have the petting zoo.
This sounds like it'd be a perfect candidate if they would allow us to be a social map.
I know. I would love that.
The only problem is I also expect the pathing to be absolutely horrible because it is a completely custom map. So,
Well, yeah, but I mean, if you were allowed to have like all kinds of players beamed down with no boss and interact with each other and just hang out, like Starfleet Academy or something.
yeah, that would work. I'm still not happy with all the materials I've used, so I'm constantly trying to find new little tweaks and what if I turn this object at this angle and all that kind of stuff. Like, my new hobby is taking buildings, kind of like what Kirkfat had shown in one of his tutorials, and use buildings as additions to floors to add some different texture to the floors.
Huh. Well, I've been actually working on something very similar to that, but mine is being done as a true interior map and not as the pseudo interior map that fills times in the sky of an exterior map. And I don't think you can use buildings in those.
No, you can't. You're working in the black space of Argalius, right?
Yeah. Which
Yeah,
is huge. I actually did some math recently while I was looking at it, and I realized that the Argalius interior, you actually have an in-game distance of 2 kilometers by 2 kilometers to build stuff.
Oh, I'm also building a map in there, and it's got about a 500-meter vertical space to it.
Well, it sounds like that's the one to use if you're gonna
Oh yeah,
use an interior map.
There's just tons and tons of black space in there, which is awesome.
Yeah. Well, good to move on. Let's see, Mark. You told us a little bit about what you're working on. Is that for your contest entry?
Yeah. I also decided that since I don't have any actual Tholian consoles, I'm going to have to improvise using things made out of crystal props, which, well, it's come out kind of like a Fortress of Solitude from Superman 2. It's basically a bug. It doesn't really have a strong resemblance to it, but, you know.
We make do with what we got.
Yeah. Do you think it's some of the crystal whatever props look like these big white columns, and if you arrange them neatly in a row, it makes something that looks a lot like the walls in the Fortress of Solitude. Unfortunately, getting a matching floor has proven challenging. But you know,
We're a bit limited when it comes to floors.
yeah.
All right, Greendragoon, what have you been working on?
Well, I had a 3-day weekend this last weekend, which means that I actually got a lot of time into the Foundry. So I started working on what will eventually be the big puzzle for my next mission. It involves a little, you have to kind of coordinate between several away teams. So you have to call in on your communicator and try and get them to do things that'll help you along.
That sounds complicated.
It is.
Yeah, I've been kind of working on something that's probably similarly complicated. To have you follow a patrol through a dangerous area. The idea being is that you have launched one of your, like your ship is damaged, and you've launched one of your shuttles so you can follow it because it has good sensors and yours aren't working. So you have to follow it through this dangerous area. If you stray, you get attacked. But of course, you know, I have to make sure that the patrolling ship, which is a little shuttle, will not aggro any enemies, because of course it'll die if it does. I don't know. I'm still working on it, and I'm still because this is for my spotlight, and I confess I have not done very well.
Do space NPCs actually get attacked?
Well, it's not an NPC. It has to be an NPC group to actually be able to do a patrol.
Yeah, contacts can't do patrols, so you can't have an immortal patrol.
Which is quite unfortunate. So I made it a battleship, actually, and reskinned it as a shuttle. So hopefully if it does aggro anything, it will win. With the player's help, of course.
I want one of those shuttles.
Uber shuttle. But I have not gotten really very much good progress done on my contest mission. So of course the deadline's coming up, so I'm going to have to really blitzkrieg it this weekend.
I look forward to seeing what you guys come up with.
I think I've got some cool stuff. I don't know if it's really as Tholian-based as it should, but I don't know. We'll see. I don't really expect to win. I just want to... I've never entered one of these contests before. I think it's going to be fun.
Keep thinking about doing, but I'm always concerned that I'm never going to get it done in time.
I'll see. If I have deadlines, that's the only way I get anything done. But I inevitably wait till the last minute before that deadline. All right, moving on to what have we played this week? Greendragoon, let's start with you.
Well, this week, something else I did was started my first KDF character. I mean, my first serious one. And in honor of that, I decided to play my first KDF Foundry mission. And it so happens that the mission I played, 12th Honor Guard Episode 1 by Kuckles, is actually his first mission. And I am happy to say it is actually fairly interesting. It's pretty clear that he's easing himself into the Foundry, but that said, he actually seems to have a very firm grasp of the basics of the Foundry. There were a lot of interesting points. It was a 4-map mission. There's an overarching plot that I only kind of got a bit of a hint at in the first episode, but it basically kind of starts out that you're called over to the 12th Honor Guard's temple. And it's actually a really good reuse of the old KDF Klingon High Council chambers. And so you go in and there's like all these grunts around doing exercises and whatnot. And in fact, if you go and talk to a few, they often have like funny little sayings or things that they're doing. But you would get recruited by Drex, Martok's son.
Yeah, son of Martok.
Yes.
The one that Worf beat the crap out of.
Yes. So he has apparently decided that Jimpok's obsession with war is leading contrary to the greater need of the Klingon Empire, and that Jimpok needs to be dealt with. So this kind of hints at the overarching plot I think he's going for. And he even talks about how eventually his plan is actually to realign with the Federation. And since his father considered them trustworthy, as the mission puts it. But for the episode 1, you're basically kind of indoctrinated in very quickly and sent on a mission to basically take out this Federation station that has basically been keeping surveillance on one of the sectors, with the goal that you need to gain favor in the Empire in order to even make a first move. So the episode 1 centers around you trying to take this starbase. It's actually pretty good. You start out by doing a attack on the station with a little help from a Klingon fleets coming in, although usually the way he tends to work it is the fleet will kind of help you out at first in the first initial battle, and then you're expected to go off, and then usually the following subsequent battles you take on alone. So you knock out the communications and eventually make it to the station. You beam down, and it's basically a redress of Starbase 39 Sierra, but he does some nice atmospheric effects. He's got like the burning embers and the lots of smoke effects everywhere and some fires, and he does a reasonably good job of kind of conveying the atmosphere of this station under siege. There's actually this Gorn that's been leading the ground assault that is, I found, just hilarious, because he's like completely convinced that you're going to fail horribly, that anyone that they recruit is like utterly useless, and that he is really excited to wear your spine as a necklace.
It's colorful. I like it.
Yeah. I mean, there was like nice little touches. There was like a number of places where the dialogue was very cleverly written. I mean, nothing too drastic, but at the same time, it felt nice. There's another part where you have to interrogate a Federation officer that you captured to find information. Considering that I hadn't played KDF very often, I, in a moment of weakness, forgetting that I was KDF and not Federation, I told them that if they told me what they wanted to know, I would spare them and their crew. And apparently picking that option, so you get them to tell you this information, and then your character goes, "Ha ha! You're actually going to Ruopente."
You treacherous bastard.
Yeah.
But that's good. It sounds good, like somebody who has, is kind of getting the basics down and will probably be turning out good things.
Yeah, I mean, at the time I played this only had 3 missions, and was averaging about 4 stars of those. So I definitely recommend people give it a play. I mean, it's definitely worthwhile, and I'm very curious to see where he takes it.
Excellent, excellent. Mark, what have you played this week?
Well, two that I remember, one of which, honestly wasn't that good, and I don't remember what its name was. The other one, though, was The Arrival. It's kind of an old mission, but apparently the person who did it republished it recently, so I played the new updated version of it. And it was kind of interesting. What it is he's telling a story of this new threat to the galaxy that is this enemy that's basically attacking everyone, and people haven't really figured out who it is or even what they can do about it yet. So you end up going and you investigate, then you accompany a Federation task force trying to, I guess the best word for it is counterattack, but it's part one, so all you really end up doing is stopping the enemy from, well, killing everyone.
I suppose, the thing you're looking for in a part one is, does it make you want to play part two? Even if it's not out yet. So do you think would you like to play part two if this guy comes out with it?
Well, I'm not. I forgot to look to see whether or not he'd actually written part two. I mentioned that this was an older mission that had been redone recently, and I'm not sure how many parts of it he'd originally created.
Well, we'll have to look that up. All right, Castmodean, have you been playing any Foundry missions lately?
Yeah. As soon as I get done usually feeding the starbase, which I've affectionately named Audrey 3, I actually, in honor of Copernicus' birthday yesterday, I actually replayed Kirkfat's Relics, because it actually has a tie-in to that whole event, and was, as always, amazed and envious of what he did with interiors and set building, and I hate him for it. When I haven't been doing either of those, I was reading through the forums, which was probably a mistake, but while I was reading one of the threads, somebody in there had said that they hadn't had their mission played at all, and knowing how that feels, I actually went and tracked it down. It's a mission called Pieces of Hate, and I'll call it a diamond in the rough. He is a first-time author, and it shows in some of the development, but there probably is going to be something spectacular there once he goes through and cleans up all the little things. Basically, you are sent forth to investigate why a Federation cold station has gone offline, and hijinks ensue.
Excellent, excellent. Well, I also kind of played some from first-time authors this week. The first one was called By Any Means by SupremeLegate. This is one I found I wanted to do some KDF missions this time instead, and so I went digging through the under 5 reviews for KDF and found this one, which I think I was the first person to ever play it. It's just a 3-map mission. You are sent to investigate why. It's actually quite similar to the one that you played, Cass. You investigate why a station is sort of no longer in contact with the Klingon High Command. And you go to the station, and you get attacked by Species 8472, who have been attacking the station, and you get to find out why. It's pretty simple. He didn't do too much with the one ground map. It was just one of the Klingon ground maps. He did some good work with the space map, which he duplicated at the end. But the thing that I really, really loved about this mission was how, at the very end, the Gorn general that's been giving you your orders throughout the whole thing sort of acts suspiciously, and it made me want to know more. It's like, wait a minute, what's going on with this guy? I don't trust him. And for a moment, it was all in his writing. And for a moment, I was thinking of this character as a real person and not just pixels on a screen. I was wondering about his motivations, he did it very subtly. All he did was put a pause in the dialogue. I'm like, wait a minute, why is he pausing? Why is he thinking about this before giving me this order? And so I really hope that we get some more from SupremeLegate. I think this is one of those that could turn into a series. I don't know if it was meant to be that, but the other one I played was one that was just requested in the Starbase UGC chat room last night when somebody heard that, yeah, we take requests. So I quick fired it up. It's almost the same sort of format. It's called A Minor Skirmish by HeraSeven, and it was another 3-map mission, space, ground, space, which is sort of a format that a lot of new authors take. It's meant to be, it's part 1, so it's meant to be part of a series. And, it was another one that was very good. Had a lot of touches of good humor, NPCs that were amusingly named. At one point you rescue Robinson Crusoe. And I enjoyed it a lot. All right, so moving on. Now comes the time when we talk about our discussion topics. These will range from, the little nitty-gritty stuff about making missions all the way up to big debates about the direction of the Foundry. So, Greendragoon, why don't you start us off?
Well, one topic I was kind of thinking of, I don't want to give away too much, but Primetime UGC just recently did their interview with 2 of the Foundry developers from Neverwinter. And one of the things they mentioned was that, as it stands, the Foundry team is on Neverwinter is not planning to move any personnel over to Stowe. And that got me to thinking on what can we reasonably expect for the future of the Foundry? I mean, what do we think can happen, and what do we think is our unreasonable expectation?
Yeah, reasonable expectation is probably the key word.
Yeah, I mean,
we all have our dream things of what we'd love to see, but will that happen? That's the question.
And I mean, we also, as human beings, tend to take whatever news comes in and then kind of throw our own interpretive spin on it. I mean, without even realizing it. So I was hoping that we can kind of get past that and kind of look at, okay, we'll sit down logically. This is how we see things go moving forward.
Well, if we look at it that, of no new personnel coming over from Neverwinter, will we still get what we've been told several times that we were getting is, the improvements, will they trickle down back over to Stowe? And I think probably they will. I think not immediately, for sure. Especially since we have especially no release date for Neverwinter at this time. Am I correct?
I can't imagine it's too much further out, considering they're about to start their second of 3 beta weekends.
So maybe summer, something like that?
Maybe.
So I suspect that they're going to want to see how it functions and see all of the changes in the live environment before they even think of moving any of the code back over to Stowe. Yeah,
and they even said that the plan for the Foundry team is to continue developing the Foundry in Neverwinter. That doesn't just stop with launch.
So, I mean, for absolutely sure is we are probably not going to see anybody developing features for the Stowe Foundry that they haven't developed already for Neverwinter.
Yeah, or at the very least,
we're not the test bed anymore for any new stuff.
Yeah. At the very least, it not being any big new changes. If it is something, it'll most likely be something unique to Stowe that Stowe Foundry in particular needs. Now that said, I think it's a mistake to assume that no one is working on this Foundry in Stowe. I mean, even beyond just bug fixes, we do seem to be getting the occasional small feature here or there, which means somebody is working on it.
But not at light speed, obviously, or warp speed.
I don't know how many
Star Trek, we should say warp speed.
And I think that's kind of some of the problem, is that we just don't know how many people are working on it. For all we know, it is one poor lonely intern shoved into the broom closet where all of the paper cups are kept, and occasionally fed little bits of stale donut to keep him going.
Well, that's all interns need, right? Yeah, I mean, we definitely suffer from a lack of knowledge as to what sort of people we have working on the Stowe Foundry.
I would like to put it out there to any of the cryptic developers that happen to be listening, and this is not a demand, this is just a request. Would it be possible to sit down and set out, from Cryptic, what are some reasonable goals for the future of the Foundry? I mean, it's better now that we kind of set our expectations appropriately versus our imaginations going wild and either coming up with the Foundry is never going to see any updates ever again, or they're going to do something at some unspecified amount of time that we've cobbled together and may or may not actually be true.
So what they need to essentially do is sort of redo the roadmap.
Exactly.
Which, of course, we've been asking for years.
Yeah.
Since December
update that
2010.
thing.
And it may be a situation where, Dan and the other devs just doesn't know. I'm pretty sure that they, even now, are still working and finalizing plans for the next season or not season.
Not season.
I wouldn't be surprised if it does have a few Foundry features. I don't know if it'll be anything too big
It's
or not.
possible. But of course, we're, as we always harp on, all of the things that are in the game now that we don't have access to. So
Yeah, and that's just a lot of work.
I think a lot of us would probably say, we don't, if you're not going to add any new features for the future, that's fine, as long as you at least have somebody working on getting us a few of these things that we've wanted forever and never got that are reasonable.
Yeah, and apparently even Zero has learned just enough to start adding a few assets.
Yeah, she did say that she was going to add a few assets here and there, and I really hope she sticks to that.
I started a thread a while back about what were the top 5 individual assets that Foundry authors wanted to see. And I didn't go out and really say it because I kind of wanted to see what people's reactions were, but I was getting at the fact is, in a universe where the Foundry resources are limited and a person has to spend a certain amount of time getting each individual asset into the Foundry, what's important, what needs to be added first. And I think that's something I'd kind of like the Foundry authors and the community in general to kind of look at is, okay, we can't get it all. What needs to be added first? These particular things are of highest priority.
Well, and you notice that the asset request thread got stickied.
No, I missed that.
I think it was Q403 is the name of the guy who made it. It got stickied. So I think that, I don't know, maybe that's a good sign that the requests are out there, that they're being heard.
It's a really long thread now.
Yes.
Yeah.
That it is.
That's also partly because I pasted in a wish list that had been sent off before, too.
Yeah, people have posted all sorts of suggestions for ideas.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I think at this point they know what we want.
Yeah,
It's
but
just
even
whether they task somebody to do it.
and just wading through, all of that, and even just reading through some of it, a lot of it are things that don't exist in game anywhere as it is.
True.
It's one thing to expect them to add something.
Somebody wanted like World War II fighters or something.
Yeah.
They're canon.
I know they were in Enterprise.
Yeah. They've actually been seen in several episodes of the TV series, but
But they're not in game.
Yeah.
But I suspect it's a little much to...
Yeah, a little bit too much to ask for at this point for things that are not already in game.
But that gives me an idea. I think I'm going to have to go and request the Red Baron biplane from Star Trek 25th Anniversary in its full 8-bit, or I guess it was 16-bit glory, because I remember dogfighting that thing.
Love that game.
Be nice to bring in some retro stuff to the Foundry. Be able to capture the feel of some of those old games.
Yeah.
Like that wooden ship that Riker had his wedding on. or what? Wait, no, that was Worf's promotion.
Yeah,
sir.
Worf's promotion.
Yeah. The
The old-
HMS
The
Enterprise.
HMS Enterprise.
With a Z.
Well, and that's one thing that I thought would be a great addition, even if it has to go through like the C-Store, but just a Holodeck Adventures pack. Because just think of the massive number of stories you could start telling if you could have a Dixon Hill environment or a Captain Proton environment, and even have it where it makes the entire game grayscale.
That'd be
Yeah.
awesome.
I don't see Foundry Essex ever showing up in the C-Store. First, A, because I don't think any of the delves actually view the Foundry that way. And
Well-
B, because I don't think there's enough Foundry authors that would actually buy
Well,
it to
we
make
know
it
it. It
worthwhile.
was, what was it, their CFO or something like that who said that they would not be monetizing the Foundry.
Yeah.
Well, and not so much as a Foundry asset that you're buying, but just have the costumes come in through the C-Store so that you can dress up as Sherlock Holmes or Dixon Hill or whatever. And while you're doing it, actually create them in the Foundry with all the plugins they need to do and put them in at the same time instead of, accidentally putting in the Vedic uniform and going, oh crud,
And then
pull
they
it out and we
pull it
never
out,
see it
yeah.
again.
Yeah.
Same thing
I think
almost
you're,
happened with the time ships.
Yeah, I think
They
you're
eventually put those back in.
I think your most likely possibility is if you can get them to do a featured episode around the holodeck.
That would be awesome.
Yeah.
The return of Moriarty.
There
And
you
I,
go.
think, and I think to some extent, I mean, some of us have been doing sort of holodeck programs as Foundry missions.
And we
Well, I
did
know
get a
of-
holodeck asset, which, as far as I'm aware, doesn't show up anywhere else in the...
That particular one, because it's the TNG variety.
Yeah,
It's the one from the old Enterprise D, which of course they don't use anymore.
true, but isn't that the one that's actually designed to fade in and out?
The only problem is getting it to fade back in correctly. Because
Uh-huh.
every time I've tried it, it shifts the player out of the way. And so you end
Because
up
of
outside.
collision.
Yeah. So I've never gotten it to successfully fade back in. So in
No,
my,
that's
my
just one of
holodeck-
those instances where you just admit shift happens.
All right. Castmodean, what would you like to talk about?
Well, we've been talking about most of what I had thought of. Yeah, unfortunately, I really don't have a particular topic that wouldn't involve rage inducement or what's going on in the Foundry forums right now.
Well, it does seem to have calmed down in the Foundry section of the forums.
This is true, and that's been a nice thing. It's just okay, then I guess I'll go this. What do you think of this whole us versus them mentality that seems to have sprung up?
It exists only in the heads of a few.
Yeah,
I
pretty
think,
much.
yeah, I think they kind of, the thing I see is people forgetting that, this supposed cabal of Foundry authors is just players exactly like them. How many of us were, not me personally, but how many of this group of authors that speaks on the forum also used those IORs to fund their fleet?
I will
yeah.
come out and admit it right now that when the console clickies existed, the Starbase was fed very well based on those.
Yeah.
I'm sure it was.
Well, mine was fed better, but back then I wasn't able to grind the duty officer stuff enough to be able to contribute as many from that. And I actually can file a commendation report almost every day now. So
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's pretty easy.
And that's what I've actually found is that even with my characters that I'd used solely to get Romulan ales, feed that bartender, I now have one or two skills at level 4 that pretty much I can get 130 fleet marks off them every couple days.
Yeah, I mean, military and engineering are definitely like the easiest to max out, and then you can just go after the high return missions and just rake in the fleet marks. And the best part is,
and the dilithium too. because
Oh, yeah.
like especially with military, there's a number of them that give 50 dilithium just naturally, and if you crit one of those,
Yeah, it's like 250 right there.
yep. So I can, on average, have a character or two that I have a 2,000 dilithium payday just off of that and the lore mission.
And the best part is it only requires like 15, 20 minutes tops to do each day, and it's not an exploit.
Yep.
Assuming that you have some of your DOF levels up that high. Personally, I
Well,
don't.
yeah, and that's kind of the advantage I had is, like, as I said, I was having to get this is back when it took 250 Romulan Ale and Dosai Rock Gut, so I was constantly having to hit the Orion Syndicate mission and which one was it? The Pharisian? One of them would actually process up a Rock Gut. So I was constantly having to do that on character after character. As soon as the cooldown went away, started again, and that was weeks and weeks. And magically, in that period, I got to level 4.
That's good side effect there, I gotta say.
Yeah, and then it's just a matter of, oh, I've got CXP. Turn in fleet marks.
Because, of course, you could always do that. They added that later, wasn't it? After Season 6?
I guess it was about the middle of Season 6 they added the accommodation turn in.
Which I thought was like the best idea they ever had, because it gave this huge reason to keep doing DOF missions even after the cap.
I thought it was a great reason. Of course, I'm still not up to that point, but I don't worry about it so much.
Well, the funny thing is the more you do it and the higher ranks you get, the better DOFs you get, and the easier the missions go.
This is true. All right, well, I got a good one for you guys. When we've covered some big philosophical issues, let's go down to small issues. How do you guys go about getting a title for your mission?
Sometimes for me, the title just comes first. I have no idea what I'm going to do otherwise, but I just have this title. Like right now, I have a mission sitting in my journal that is just a title. It has nothing in it yet because I haven't figured out what I'm going to do with it, but I wanted to write down that title. Of course, then I also think I had an idea for it, but at this point, it's like one of those, okay, I have by Twilight's Last, what is this going to be? So now I have to kind of make the mission based on the title.
I always, what I do is I come up with the basic concept of the mission, like for Darkness Between the Stars. I came up with the idea that the mission was going to take place in the interstellar void. Then I came up with the title. For my current mission, the Beta Rana incident, I came up with the idea that the Tholians were mucking around with this star and doing something, and you have to go find out what it is. The mission gets its name from the name I came up with for the star, Beta Rana. So I always at least come up with the basic premise of the mission, then come up with a name based on that. But, yeah.
Well, I tend to use song titles, my favorite songs. And sometimes they have like a direct correlation with what the mission is about, and sometimes they just completely don't, because it just sounded good.
Well, and I do have that as well. There's one, I was going to try and do the Spotlight mission, but then I realized that I don't work inside the development time frame of the Spotlight system. So I have...
You mean the contest?
Yeah, oh yes. I was going to have an entry for the Tholian contest, but time got away from me, and I have partially completed maps and concepts. I haven't quite worked out how it's going to work fully, but so I'll probably eventually release it. But I decided I would give a hint if somebody was really good at obscure song titles. The title of the mission would give you an idea what the full mission's about. I figured that one's going to probably be too obscure. Like with Keeping Up with the Chisens, the full idea behind that was I wanted to create this mission about helping this group of settlers, and it was one of those, well, what are they up to? We're keeping up with the Joneses. that's actually where the full title came from, and actually the race, and then it kind of went crazy from there.
Yeah, I always try and look through the reviews to see if anybody has actually, if I happen, because they're fairly obscure songs usually, so I usually try and see if somebody has figured it out where they came from. And then, of course, there was one where I actually based the entire plot off the song that the title came from, which, of course, is my Spotlight Wrecked Gino in a Jar. Just based off the, I think it was Thin Lizzy did the original song, Whiskey in a Jar. But my favorite, of course, is the Metallica cover. Because I'm a bit of a metalhead. So.
I've only got the my one mission so far, which of course is about the Midas array. So I knew from early on that the title was going to involve something Midas, and of course Midas is also the name of a mythical king, and so I was going to originally make each part like have a different title, and so I was going to have like the Shadow of Midas, and then the Hand of Midas, and then the Might of Midas, or something like that. And then I decided that was just going to be too confusing, and so I ended up condensing everything just down to the first part's title, Shadow of Midas. I thought, yeah, that pretty much fits everything else too.
The funny story, actually, is my very first missions, the Descent series, when they were on Tribble, it was actually called the Dissension series, only I had misspelled it. I spelled it with a T instead of an S, and nobody pointed it out to me for quite a while. I even, went so far as making a banner for it, which had it misspelled. And that one, of course, just came out of what the mission series is about, which is about dissension in the ranks of the Romulan Empire. What brought it to my mind, the topic, was talking to Captain P.F. Dennis, who was making his new mission and had sort of a working title for it, and always with the intention of getting a new title, because he likes puns, or does Captain P.F. Dennis, and he was always had the intention of finding a new title for it, but never did, because he couldn't come up with anything better than what he had. So, anything else you guys would like to cover?
So, one of my personal favorite things for doing in the Foundry is architectural work. Like finding ways of building interesting structures out of the various props we have. Like I mentioned earlier that I'm building a complete starbase interior for my current mission. That's honestly, that's over my time doing the Foundry stuff, that's actually become my favorite thing for doing in the Foundry, is coming up with new ways to build things out of random stuff.
I think that's something that you like also, Cast, isn't it?
Yeah, that's how many a transporter pad has been made. Is just finding, okay, what if I put this bit in here, and what if I do that? I think that myself also, that's one of the most fun aspects that I've run into, is just building the maps. I consider myself crap at writing a story. I am most certainly not an Ally Mac. I am not any of the people who are good at laying down and storyboarding a story. But I just like building things and seeing what I can manage. If I could find a way to just create a mission that's a showcase of architecture, I would be happy.
It's actually something I've kind of thought about in an abstract sense doing, was if it would ever be worth making missions that were just showpieces, like map design showpieces.
One good one for that is Krios Falling. I think it was by Alien de Jour. Because as part of, on one of the maps, he went and actually built this entire city that part of the mission takes place in. And that was one of those things that when I first saw it, it just kind of blew me away, because I didn't even know that you could make things on that scale in Foundry.
Well, I've known people to make sort of RP maps for themselves or their fleet. A fleet that I used to be in, this awesome author made a bar for us to hang out in. It had all kinds of multiple levels, and and that was the entire thing. There was no plot to it. There was no mission. It was just a place for 5 of us to hang out. And that's great. And actually, there was a thread I posted in earlier today where somebody was talking about in the final episode of Voyager, the future Captain Janeway mentions that Voyager itself has become a museum just sitting in San Francisco. And people were wondering that, okay, well, they changed the timeline now. Did Voyager end up becoming a museum still? And I posted in there that, I'd love to see it be a Foundry mission where you can just go up into the Voyager Museum from some door in Starfleet Academy and just wander around. Have some computers to interact with and things like that, and just have the museum there for whoever wants to see it.
Well, it's one of the
Then
few
the
famous
question
starships.
then the question becomes, though, would you have the EMH in there, since they still haven't established whether or not he's his own life form?
They did that, though, didn't they?
Yeah, they did.
Wasn't that in the path to 2409?
Yeah.
All they've established is that he might have sentient rights, but there are no sentient rights for holographic AI characters.
There was like a whole legal battle that was supposed to have taken place where he
Like that.
gained his rights as a sentient being.
And that legal battle is taking place in 2409.
Is it really?
Yes.
Well, hey, there's the Foundry mission.
Well, actually, there is in that. That's one of Kirkfat's missions.
Is it really?
Where he actually, you go before the Federation Council and have to, you're defending. It's his, what is it, Love Slave, Vulcan Love Slave number 9, I think.
Because I played that, and I don't remember that one in there, but it's been a little while since I played that.
The whole end of the mission, you're before... actually, I think it's the Federation Supreme Court that you're before, and you're basically defending her rights as a sentient program
But of
for
course, the
murdering...
Doctor had his mobile emitter, so he wouldn't have to stay with Voyager, no matter where it is.
Or else they could have installed the EMH Mark II.
There you go.
Didn't the Doctor transfer himself to Prometheus in one episode?
Yeah.
Temporarily?
Yeah, and that's where he met the EMH Mark II.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And they did Jupiter Station later on, too. And
Well, one of the things you could do is you could have a holographic tour guide, things like that. But I think it'd be fun to do, just somebody build Voyager. Obviously, have to take some liberties with it because we don't have great assets for doing something like that.
yeah.
I don't know, are the Intrepid bridges that we have, are they in the Foundry?
I don't recall, actually.
Because
I don't think
they
so.
added a whole slew of bridges at one point. I can't remember if it
Yeah.
included that.
I can't recall. I haven't had a need to look for it.
No, me neither.
Yeah, that's been one problem, is that generally I don't use Federation bridges because any of the people who have changed their bridge, the minute you use a bridge that isn't theirs, they go 2-star,
Because it's not
my
bridge.
not my interior. Or
That's why in one of my missions, I needed you to be on your bridge because I was going to have the player, sort of fight a battle from the bridge, giving orders to their bridge officers. And I knew that was going to happen, so I created a scenario where you have to go to your auxiliary bridge. So I built that from scratch.
Actually, that kind of brings up something I wouldn't mind bringing up.
Yeah.
In the Foundry mission I'm working on right now, you actually start out on your bridge on the ground, where you're basically, not trying to give away too much, but where you're basically attacked by a number of your own crew. And to kind of compensate for the fact that I can't make it your bridge, I picked the most generic bridge that I can, which is actually the, what's the War Games map, where it's got that one that's based off of whatever the most common or RI level bridge. It kind of looks like the Sovereign
default bridge.
Yeah, it's like the Sovereign bridge, or their interpretation of the Sovereign bridge. And then I just beat the heck out of it. So it's like got battle damage everywhere.
So it's almost unrecognizable.
It's still recognizable, but I try to put enough cool stuff on the bridge in order so that don't care about the fact it's not your bridge and that all this cool stuff is happening. There's like torpedo that comes in and the view screen explodes. And so, yeah, just kind of, then you
Sounds
get
like fun.
attacked, and then all this action happens, and eventually you have to run for the Jeffries tube.
there's sort of that two approaches you can take to that problem usually of people recognizing that, this is not the interior of my ship. Is you can either ignore it or try and find a way around it.
Yeah, I mean, even that is still a risk, and I'm always kind of hesitant of, am I making the right call here? I mean, is this going to come back and bite me?
Mm-hmm. And of course, a lot of players, I suspect, don't know that we can't send you to your bridge that you have equipped at that particular time.
Actually, I got a 1-star review just recently complaining that one of the enemy groups that I put down managed to send all of his abilities on a 4-minute cooldown. I made it too hard.
What's your secret? What's your secret, man? I want to know how to do that.
I don't know, but I want to get that into PvP.
It's a glitch that actually doesn't really have anything to do with the enemy you're fighting. If you have two different powers active at the same time, there's this weird glitch that gives all of your powers a cooldown that's absurdly long.
Yeah, I had it happen to me in an STF.
Oh, that's probably the engineering team one that locks you down for 2 minutes.
It's not. I don't have engineering team, so it was something else.
Oh, then, yeah, it was something
I don't know
else.
if they've even tracked down what the cause of it is.
I know the devs working on it, and I imagine they're trying to get that one fixed quickly.
That would be my top priority if I were the bug-fixing guys at Cryptic. I don't know. We do tend to get a lot of flack for bugs that we can't have any control over.
Oh, yeah, and sometimes not even bugs. I've gotten several 1-stars recently because the door is at Andoria. So instead of clicking on Begin Mission, they click on Andoria System. And then nothing in Andoria, no mission, what the heck.
I've had a couple of bugs, and I only know this secondhand through reviews and people I've talked to, where during a certain copy of the mission will get acquired that is missing a key interact or a reach marker is missing, and it doesn't seem to be the same one. It shows up in like less than 1% of plays, but it does happen.
I remember one, I don't know, it was probably more like a year ago now, that there was some bug in Cryptic, the whole game, that was occasionally spawning these, when you would have a Romulan captain level group, it would spawn this insanely powerful warbird. And it was doing it in the Foundry too, which of course, no control over us, but, would lay waste to anybody, and of course, would spawn a lot of 1-stars.
Yeah, I have seen a lot of reviews where I read the review and I look at it and I just think to myself, problem exists between keyboard and chair.
User error.
I had 1-star mission that was complaining that he complained that he couldn't find the mission, and so I actually contacted him about it, and he wrote me back and said, I went to Utopia Planitia and couldn't find it. And I'm like, when do I ever have you go to Utopia Planitia?
I wonder if, because one time I had Evil 70th, I signed up to have him play one of my missions, and what was happening is he would search for the name of the mission, and it would come up with 2 entries, one of which was not in any way related to my mission. And he clicked on that, and he emailed me, he said, I can't find the entryway to your mission. It's not working. It's not what you told me it was.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And I looked at him and I said, hey, wait a minute, are you trying this other one that comes up when you search for mine? And he's like, oh, yeah, it is.
Well, one of mine was from this guy who, his problem was that he just sucked hard at ground combat, and he found it challenging fighting lieutenant-level Klingon group. So when he ran into a Klingon group that was higher level than lieutenant, he just kind of rolled over and died, and he decided to give me a 1-star because of that.
It's tough because, we can't, you can't judge player skill when you're designing a mission because you never know what the skill level of the player is going to be. play to play, you know? And I don't know, I find Stowe a little bit inconsistent when it comes to difficulty, because, I mean, if you can play through a mission twice and have a different combat experience both times, just depending on what kind of crits you get, depending on, you know, what kind of mobs spawn, things like that. So it's very difficult, and there's no right way to do it.
And just, I find mostly all you can do is kind of target towards the average.
True.
Just to answer a previous question, I checked, and no, the Intrepid Bridge is not in the Foundry.
Oh, that's a shame. Well, hear that, Cryptic? We want the Intrepid map in the Foundry so we can build a Voyager museum. There we go.
Also, all the ship interiors.
No, shh. My priority first. Well, guys, looks like we are running up against our time limit, so we will sign off. Good night, everybody.
Good night.
Good night.
Right.